Now, I have the honor to introduce someone who has just rocked my world in the last year, just an incredible woman. She's a mother of 5, grandmother of 13. Yep, she's got a baker's dozen. Married to her husband, Lon, for 32 years. She's a recovering workaholic, creator of Woven, Piece by Piece, and 97X Madison's Christian hip hop and radio coordinator, and is our curator of fun on the Greater Things Now team. Welcome, Trula Hensler.
I'm going to tell you, this song by Brandon Lake, my son sent me this morning, and he said, Mom, when you get ready to talk today, I want you to play this. I want you to get hyped up. I want you to show them who you really are. The rest of these ladies all are professionals, and they are very good at what they do. You're getting authentic Trula today, all right? I'm somebody who walks and talks. That's who I am. I am somebody who is a recovering workaholic. I like to be involved in a lot. I'm currently on 4 different boards, and I tell you that because it's going to explain a little bit on who I am. But what's incredible is that when I started to go through something back in 2018, I am blown away right now because listening to Julie, listening to Christine, I know these guys well, but when I tell you that we did not know what each other were going to say today, it is a fact. You see, the board and committee, of Greater Things this year, since our last conference, decided that we would start and pray every Wednesday morning, 7 to 7:30 for this conference. We prayed for every seat and every one of you that are sitting here. You're not here by chance. And what we're saying is not here by chance either. Because as I listen to Christine, I'm like, oh, good Lord. She is going on the exact same verses that I have. And I'm like, she is explaining her story that is so similar yet different than my story. I grew up a Christian. God's always been a part of my life. I've always had a faith in God. I'm very ecumenical. We laugh because I tell everybody, I worked for the Catholics, our kids went to the Lutheran school, we sent them to Baptist Awanas on Wednesday night, and then we were non-denominational, all right? That's what I love about Greater Things. I love this. This is why I'm part of it, is because it's just simple. It's about Jesus. It's not about what religion we belong to. It's not about what political party we belong to. Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, it is one and only about God. It really is. And so this year, when they asked me to share my story, I had to do a little praying. If you look at my social media page, it looks like I am out there. I mean, I like to brag on my kids and my grandkids, and you'll see pictures. And, well, the Trula inside, she's pretty private. And in my marriage with my husband, that was really rocky the first 3 years, because Lon's out there. Anybody who knows my husband, he's out there. He's an open book. I am private. I am like, not ready to share. So I had to do a little praying about this, because it's deep. It was hard. Crazy enough, I knew something like this was going to happen to me someday. And so I'm going to just tell you a little bit of my story. And what I'm realizing right now, you guys, is the clock that I brought to bring in is totally wrong. So I'm going to have no idea about time around here. So what I want you to know today is in 2018, I'm going to take you back. I want you to remember this summer. The summer of 2018, many of you will remember, if you're familiar with Sun Prairie, that was the year we had the explosion downtown. You all there? Yeah. That was my summer too. Not only did my son and daughter-in-law live a block off, and they're a paramedic and an EMT, And my daughter-in-law was there giving her volunteer, time and everything to the whole situation. But I was suffering with just crazy, crazy symptoms. And, like typical women, we have digestive issues, right? We don't know what's happening. And so I'm going through that, and my dad's going through heart surgery, and a good friend of mine, her husband passes away. And there's just a lot of crap happening in the same 2-week time period. So all of a sudden, I'm, starting to really feel the pressure, but I'm noticing some symptoms starting. And I'm noticing that I'm starting to walk like a drunk. When I walked, I would drift, and I would go to the left, and I couldn't stop it to save my life. I'd come out of work at night, walk to the parking lot, I'd drift. And I was like, what is going on? So then I'd practice trying to walk straight. Well, let me tell you something. If I'd gotten picked up by a police officer, they would have hauled me in. Because pretty soon, not dizzy, but off balance. I start to get off balance, and I'm like, whoa, okay. To the point when we'd go to the lake, my husband was always watching me. He was waiting for me to end up off that pier because I would be all over it. Then, all of a sudden, I am coming back from a weekend kayaking with my girlfriend up north, and my niece is in town, and she was on her way back to University of Iowa, so I come back excited to spend some time with her. And this is July 30th. And what I'm going to show you is not only my life, which woven piece by piece is truly what it's about, but I came to an abrupt halt in 2018. I was getting ready for my friend's husband's funeral, and I am going into my room, I'm getting dressed, Lon's going downstairs to take a quick shower, and so I'm ready, and I'm like, gosh, I could just, take a few minutes here. And I lay down on the bed, and let me back up one moment. I come out earlier that morning, and my niece is in the kitchen with my husband, and I'm not feeling right, but, it happens. And so I'm kind of walking out, and my friends know I'm a big tea drinker, so my husband, who calls himself my cabana boy, he is getting me tea, he's taking care of his wife, and I'm just not feeling it. Well, he and my niece are sitting in our kitchen, and they're talking at the table. And I'm going in to, sit in the living room, drink my tea, wake up, just not feeling it. And I'm walking in there, and all of a sudden, I'm noticing that they keep whispering, and it's starting to make me mad. I'm getting a little irritated. And I'm like, and I finally kind of spin on them, and I'm like, listen, if you guys want to whisper, go somewhere else. That is so rude to do, right now. And they're both kind of shocked, and I snap at my husband all the time, you guys. That's not a big deal. But I don't snap at my niece and my goddaughter. And so I'm like, what is wrong with me? Unbeknownst to me then was the fact that I was losing the hearing in my right ear, and I didn't know it yet. I still didn't know it then. And so when I laid down on that bed that day, I was just going to take a 5-minute snooze while I waited for Lon to get out of the shower. And next thing I know, I am unresponsive. And there's a whole story with that is comical. Someday maybe I will have it out in a book. But needless to say, my husband, instead of calling 911, he goes and starts finding his son and his daughter-in-law, who are a paramedic and an EMT. And he thinks that they should come over and assess me, and do I really need to go in? And so they come, they do an assessment, I'm unresponsive, and then I'm starting to come around, and I have stroke-like symptoms, all right? And so all of a sudden, I'm kind of aware of what's going on. Next thing I know, my son and daughter-in-law have me in the truck. They're taking me to St. Mary's, and I get there, and one thought that I remember having is, gosh, I'm so happy my son is a paramedic. Listen to him just rattle off those stats and vitals. And I remember thinking this. And I'm like, and next thing I know, they're whisking me back to the emergency room. I get back to the emergency room, and I'm going to tell you what, this is the longest day, one of the longest days of my life. It is 8 hours of a battery of tests, test after test after test. And how many of you have been there and you've had all these tests and you're telling the doctor what's wrong with you and everything's coming back negative? And you're like, I'm not a hypochondriac. There is something really happening here. And so I'm getting a little frustrated. And I'm trying to tell the doctor, listen, there's something going on here, you know, and everything keeps coming back. She's okay. Well, now I'm really frustrated. Then they bring, I wish I'd put the picture of this up. I saw it when my mom passed away and they were assessing her with a stroke. That picture came back. There's a picture they assess when you have a stroke. And it is just a simple, it looks like a coloring book page. And what they tell you is, tell me what's going on in the picture. Super simple, right? I remember looking at the picture. I could see the picture. My brain would not gather the thoughts and pull them together. I couldn't. And then I began to cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there is something wrong. I've had a stroke. I was so sure. But of course, all the tests still coming back negative. They finally send me back at the end of the night for an MRI. And I'll never forget this, coming back from the MRI and sitting there, or actually I was laying, I guess, more, and thinking, God, please just give me a diagnosis so I can do something about it. Tell me what's going on. And so all of a sudden, my neuro ER doc comes in, love that guy, and he comes in and he says, Trula, you have a brain tumor. You're going to be seeing a lot of white coats soon. At which time, I'm taking it in and processing, still laying there, very calm, and I hear my husband, and I hear this, I don't know, gasp, small sob, whatever you want, and it undoes me. And then the tears. I lose some tears, and because I'm thinking about him, I'm thinking about what this means, I'm thinking about, wow, what is coming of this? But I got to tell you something, and I want you to remember this. There is something that Chris said that is crazy because it's so true. In the Bible, it talks about you will have trouble. You can count on it. If you're a Christian, it doesn't mean you're getting a free pass. It doesn't mean you're not going to go through hard times. It doesn't mean that, life isn't going to suck. It is going to suck. The difference is that as a Christian, as somebody, and I even hate using the word Christian, you guys. I think it gets overused too much. As somebody who just loves Jesus and has a relationship with him, that's what I look at myself as. I know that I've got somebody going through this stuff with me. The crazy thing is, I'm still laying there in the hospital, and all of a sudden, I remember, and I feel God talking to me. 25 years before, I had been given, I don't know what you want to say, a word, a whatever, that talked about all of the hard times I was going through at that time. And much like what Christine was saying, times that you can't get off the floor, you are sobbing so hard, that you are crying and you are just saying, I can't do it anymore, God, I can't do it. And there are times when I'm yelling at God saying, I can't do it. What are you going to do? Help me. 25 years before, I had had this word that says, don't give up on me. I am here. You are going to make it through these times, and there is more to come. You're going to be needing to be ready for something far worse in your life. But I want you to know that I am going to be there. I am going to be there. How do you take that? So I'm like, well, I'm probably going to get breast cancer. Everybody else in my house has, the family has breast cancer. I just figured that was likely what was going to happen. So when I got the diagnosis about a brain tumor, all of a sudden it was like I felt this is what you've been prepared for. don't give up on me. I'm here. We're going through this together. Well, I leave that night, and between the diagnosis and the surgery, I began to get undeniable moments of God. Now, a lot of people are going to call this coincidence. Some may call it karma. Some may say, you're just lucky. Let me tell you something. It has nothing to do with it. When you are a child of God, God arranges things in your life. He makes connections. He opens doors. He closes doors. But things begin to happen because, remember, all things work together for good? Yeah. Remember that. When you're a child of God, it's different. So a few things start to happen, and I start to see God. And honestly, it was probably 100 things. But I'm only going to tell you about these. The first thing that happened is when I began to share it at work, which took a couple of weeks to get my head around it. I couldn't believe, I kept thinking I must still be in shock because I'm not concerned. I'm not freaking out. My friends know I have anxiety attacks. I have a panic attack from time to time. Why am I not experiencing that? Of any time in my life I should be having anxiety attacks, it's now. But this blanket of peace just kept following me around. And I was so weirded out by it. I'm like, I must be in massive shock. Holy crap. Well, I go to work, tell my boss. He keeps it secret for me for a couple of weeks while I deal with things. Then I told him, you know what, I got to start working on FMLA. I'm going to be off 3 months, all that good stuff. He shares it with senior leadership. And the first thing that happens is senior leadership gets together and they come to me and say, listen, we used to have a woman who worked here. Her name was Mara Bain. She's now the mayor of a city up in Minnesota. We want to introduce you because she had the exact same brain tumor you have. It's called a schwannoma. We affectionately nicknamed it Schwanny, and I started having hashtags of KSA, kick Schwanny's arse. And so that was the way, we handle things in humor in my family. And so I'm like, wow, God, thanks. I had somebody to talk to. I had somebody who went through it, who knew exactly what I was going through. Next thing, I'm sitting in my office, and a coworker of mine comes in, friend of mine, and Travis is like, Trula, you said you were trying to look at going to Mayo, get a second opinion. I said, yeah. And remember, all I'm telling you, all of this happened within a 3-week period, all right? He comes in and he says, do you remember me telling you that my wife, Brittany, did her residency up at Mayo, Rochester? And I was like, no, didn't remember that, but cool. I said, can you kind of tell me the way I've got to go through this? My insurance isn't going to pay for it. This is cash out of my pocket. Walk me through what I need to do here. And he did, help me get hooked up, everything else. He said, but did you know she's an anesthetist, and she did her residency there? And do you know the department that she worked with? Yeah, that's right, neurosurgery. These are the neurals you want to see when you're at Mayo. All right, cool. Like, okay, God, that's kind of cool. All right. So we get ready to do the Mayo thing, and I go through all that. And by the way, if y'all ever have to go to Mayo, best thing ever. Then I find out that not only is Brittany out of Mayo, she was supposed to be in my operating room because my neurosurgeon in Madison is who she works for as the anesthetist. Some wow factors starting to come in here. All right. And I just dare any of you guys, everything I'm going to tell you, really? You're going to tell me it's coincidence? Next thing, you guys, I think I'm ringing. Then, all of a sudden, I find out she's supposed to be there, but she's going on maternity leave. And I hear that she would have recused herself anyway. She doesn't like to do that with friends in the operating room. It's like, all right, that's cool. I go, we're going to go to Mayo. Then my friend Boone calls me, back from my radio days. And she goes, what's up, girl? What is happening here? And I began to catch her up on my life. And again, remember, I got this blanket of peace around. I'm almost feeling like a celebrity. I get to go have brain surgery. I mean, seriously, it was that ridiculous. And I'm like, okay, Boone. She's asking me, do I remember Michael? And I'm like, well, yeah, your son. Yeah. And guess what? Yeah, he had just graduated. He was now taking his first position out in Arizona. Oh, yeah, he was a neurosurgeon, by the way. How about if I hook you up with him? Love that. I want to talk to somebody about this. I'm one of those people, the more I know, the better I can do. I'm a planner, a control freak, call me what you will, but I am. And so I talk to Michael and talk about everything, and he walks me through it, and so that blanket of peace, it's still there. I mean, I'm really feeling good. So then, next thing I know, he is telling me about what will happen, and what to expect, and things I should look at, and treatments I should ask about, all of which I do. And then the other thing is, I've got to go to Mayo. It's not cheap, but I got to go be assessed. They're not going to pay for it, and because I had Dean Care, and they're saying, we've got our own experts, that's good enough for us. And I'm like, well, okay. Then my mom calls, and she says, Trula, I talked to Grandpa. And I just want you to know that if you want to go to Mayo, we will be here to support that. Even if you decide to have the surgery, everything. Now, guys, this is going to be $100,000 surgery anyway. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Had no clue about that. I'm like, all right. So then I begin my trek to Mayo. This is my daughter, Aspen, by the way, who couldn't be here today. So, Aspen, I'm calling you out when you see this recording. I'm thinking about you. She's down at Oklahoma State homecoming, by the way, so I excused her. That's the only thing we'd excuse her for. She went with me to Mayo Clinic. She also went through so much of my brain surgery with me. Mayo Clinic was this amazing place that we went at the end of August. And we were there for a couple of days. And also, just so happens that my husband's cousin lives in the Rochester area, Troy, went and stayed with him, took care of all of our lodging, right? Food, everything. Everything's being taken care of for us. A friend of ours, who happens to be up in Minneapolis, says, hey, can I come stop by and see you? Yeah, love to see you. His name's John. He comes, and his daughter, by the way, works for Apple. And so he comes and said, with you losing hearing, with this, that, and the other, and we talk about a lot of stuff. You know what? My daughter wants to gift you a new iPhone. The, what am I trying to say? The earbuds, thank you. And a watch. All of which so that when I start to get a hearing apparatus, I can run through the phone, et cetera, right? And I'm like, I'm just really blown away now. Still, blanket of peace, you guys. From there, my surgery is October 15th. And let me tell you what, I celebrate this every year because this is a big deal in my life. And not just because of the brain surgery, but this was when God made himself real. I mean, so real that I can't even communicate it. So you see, it's the day before surgery, and I'm at church. My family's come in town. Everybody's coming to, band together. We have this big family prayer circle after lunch and just great time with each other, right? But that morning in church, I go to church, and our church is such that they always have prayer teams up front if you want to go up and just have somebody pray with you. Sometimes life sucks. You need that. And I was like, yeah, I got surgery tomorrow. Maybe I should get a little more prayer. So I went up, and I can't even tell you who I prayed with. Prayed with somebody, prayed with me, and I had a girlfriend, I'll never forget, Corey, coming up, putting her hand on me and praying for me. And I was so ready for surgery, I can't begin to tell you. I just wanted to get it done. And all I know is God just kept this blanket of peace around me. And I'm like, man, I can't believe that I have no concern. I have no, I don't have fear. I don't have anxiety. I don't have any of the things I normally would have. So as I get done praying, I turn and I see my friend Bill Zahner. And he was a school admin back when my kids were going to Abundant Life, some of them. And I see him and he's like, come give me a hug. And I just, the man I love. His wife was there. Now, I had never met Kathy before this time. And he said, Trula, I want to introduce you officially to my wife, Kathy. And I'm like, Kathy, it's so nice to meet you. And I shake her hand and give her a hug. And she said, can I pray over you? I'm like, heck yeah. No such thing as too much prayer, right? So she begins to pray over me. And I am just so filled, I just can't tell you how I felt. But when Kathy finishes, this still blows my mind. She says to me, I want you to know that I am part of Dr. Logier's team, and I'm going to be in the operating room with you tomorrow. And I am like, I am now, and I'm telling you guys, every stinking day there were things happening in my life that showed me God was there. Every day, couldn't get in for an appointment. Somebody'd have a cancellation. There were so many little things, big things, crazy things. That flabbergasted me. And I sat there and was just in awe of God. I'm just like, He cares enough about me to bring all these connections, to move all these pieces. I'm feeling on top of the world. I'm going into surgery going, I'm skating through this thing. This is awesome. God must have it so that when I get done with this, I can talk about, the whole journey and everything. I knew that God had a plan. He told me 25 years ago, you're going to go through something. I want you to know. Don't give up on me, right? So I get home, have great time with my family. And any of you who've had surgery, the big thing you have to do every night. You've got to sterilize your body. You got to go to bed and clean sheets, clean pajamas, get up the next day, sterilize your body again, and then go to the hospital. So we do that. And I wake up. This is another thing that blows my mind. How many of you, when you fly out on an early morning flight, how many of you sleep good? Or are you like me, that when you're flying out, you're like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to miss my flight, and you don't sleep well, and the whole night you're just kind of sleeping a little, but you're looking at the clock? Okay, do you think brain surgery might be a tiny bit more important than flying out the next morning? Seriously. I'm like, I slept like a baby. I didn't get up. I didn't do anything. I was just like, I went to bed. I was peaceful. That blanket of peace is still on me, and I'm like, all right, if this is shock, I hope it stays till I'm done with this thing. But I knew that wasn't the case. That peace that passes all understanding that God talks about, that was mine. I didn't know how much it was mine, but it was mine. I'm like, I can't understand it. It's way past anything I could understand. But this blanket, oh my gosh. So next morning, my sister, my daughter, my husband, and I, we're all on our way to St. Mary's. We get there, and I am jovial, fun. We're all laughing, and that's just how our family deals with stuff, just so you know. But we're so positive about how things are going to go, and things are great. And they start putting all these electrodes all over my body, and, they're explaining to me that this is so when you get into the brain and start doing things that they know if they're losing parts of your body and blah, blah, blah. All right. And then they start to braid my hair. I'm getting ready. They take me to the operating room. And I go in there, I remember hearing music and people asking me questions and, you ready? And I know it's going to be a 5 to 8 hour surgery, and I'm like, I'll see you on the flip side. So I am going in this type of, this is a picture I think my husband took. I'm just sitting there full of life. I'm entertaining, they're entertaining me, we're ready to go, all right? That piece, it's a crazy piece. And I go into surgery, and it's going to be, like I said, 5 to 8 hours. 8 hours comes and goes. 8.5 comes and goes. Then 9. Then 9.5. And I remember my husband telling me that the very first time Kathy, because Kathy was the one that was calling out and keeping communication with my family, the very first time she called out, my husband said, something wasn't right. I could tell in her voice, something wasn't right. And I was like, oh, I can't imagine. I definitely know I wanted to be on my side than their side. I know what that's like when it's your spouse or your kid or your parent. It's awful. And so all of a sudden, I am in there, and the surgeon comes out at 9.5 hours, and they take my husband and daughter into the meeting room. And this very confident, I loved my surgeon, still do, I'd have him again, came out looking pretty broken. This is according to my husband. And just looking defeated. And he tells my husband that they had to sever the facial nerve. They began losing my facial nerve, my facial function, my head, in the surgery. And they ended up having to cut it. They couldn't tell if the tumor grew out of it to that direction or if it grew into the facial nerve. They weren't sure. The way most of these brain tumors work is that most people, the way it was supposed to go, is they remove it all, and oftentimes it's right by these nerves, your hearing nerve, the facial nerve, whatever. But they take all of it out, but you still have like a little bit of residual. But it's called a slow-growing tumor, all right? Now I'm going to tell you I challenge that because I know a lot of people who've had them grow back. And I'm thinking that's what I'm coming out with. I'm still going to have facial function. I'm in ICU. I did not wake up well on anesthesia. That, too, is another story, pretty funny. But evidently, while I was still groggy, they had come in and told me what had happened and asked me if I wanted to see myself. Well, I was groggy enough, I don't even remember that. Then they'd come back later in the day, and I remember him making rounds and letting me know that my face was paralyzed. There was nothing they could do for it, and that it wouldn't come back. What he could do, and he had done, was to call the UW and get me in with one of their neurosurgeons and the ENT side of things, that could take those cut nerves, plug one into my tongue, plug one into my head here, and try reanimating my face. Well, I don't know if you can imagine what that feels like in ICU. I wake up on a ventilator. Oh, that was a whole different idea. And I am hooked up to everything and its brother. I think there had been some problems the first night over, because one of the things they're trying to prevent is your brain seizing, having seizures. And there were some things that went on that night, but I remember when they first finally handed me the mirror. Oh, I wish I could vomit. I am on my way for this surgery, right? I go in thinking I'm coming back out, same Trula. And then the unexpected happens. And I am in ICU. I have no face, no hearing, no face on the right side. I can't feel anything. Everything is numb. Thankfully, they left me a little hair on that side that I could cover up all the scars. I remember seeing my face for the first time, and my look, oh my gosh. It was so far that I could not suck. I couldn't put anything into it because it all came out. I couldn't, everything just literally in half. I couldn't smell or feel, or my tongue, or my eye. My eye is hanging like down to here, and the upper part is up, and it's just open, all right? It looks, oh my gosh, I can't tell you. Ooh. And so what they had to do was they had to tape my eye and keep that. So I wake up to this, a big bandage on my eye, and this is my new reality. You know when Christine said, you wake up and it's a nightmare? It's a nightmare you can't get out of, and you realize that's your life? The despair, the hurt, oh my gosh, it's awful. My son thought he was kind of funny and helpful and brought me up. He was hunting at the time, so he brought me up one of his duck hunting things. And guys, I was ready to live with that thing for the rest of my life. I felt normal, except for the eyeball that didn't work anymore. This is my nightmare. This is what I can't wake up from. And I spend a few more days in the hospital. But I'm going to tell you about that Tuesday night, because I'm talking to God. And Christine mentioned this too. At least I think it was her. Sometimes when you're praying, you don't have to pray and bow your head, close your eyes, fold your hands. Let me tell you what real prayer is. It's where you wake up and you talk to God constantly. It's just like, Lord, how's your day today? Hope you're going before me today. It's going to be one of those days. Well, let me tell you something. This time, I'm talking to God. And I'm a little upset. I'm a little disillusioned. I'm like, God, I knew I was going to go through this. I had such peace. I was so good. What is up? And we go through falling apart. I never said, why me? I knew this was, I just couldn't understand. God, you went into that operating room with me. Kathy was in there interceding for me, praying for me every hour of that surgery. I'm like, why? Why? What is the plan? You told me you had a plan. We don't always like God's plans. We don't like the wait. We don't like what He knows is going to happen. It happens to us, you guys. It might be a marriage situation. It might be health. It could be any number of things. But I'm going to tell you, I saw my husband, son, and daughter-in-law. They left. My daughter is sitting with me. And all I knew was I've got to go back to what I know. I know one thing, that when I fill my home, or I fill my car, or I fill my ears with worship music, Christian music, anything that gives glory to God, there's power in those words that no other lyric has. And I love music, guys. I love all kinds of music. But there's something different that happens when you start pumping that stuff through your house, your car, I turned to Aspen and said, I can't do this. I want to die right now. Please put on my worship music. So she gets her iPhone and she's putting it in. She puts it on my ear that works, okay? I'm having massive pain in my eye. I am a mess. And so I lay there with it, and I fall asleep, and all I'm listening to is God's word and praising God and His promises. And I hang on to that phone. I hang on to that music. And something happens that night. I went from a woman who didn't want to live, I can't even tell you, to waking up the next morning. And nothing happened. I wasn't automatically healed. Nothing changed except my heart and my mind. Because you see, that verse that talks about that peace that passes all understanding, well, the thing is it's meant to guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. Whatever happened that night, God did some kind of change, because when I woke up, I still hated life. I still was living the nightmare. It sucked, and I won't tell you any two ways but that. But something had changed in me, and I wasn't looking back any longer. I was going to look forward. This is what I'm going to do. We're going to do this. Got to get this going, this going, this going. I had a plan. It was what I needed to do. And so I finished being in the hospital that week, and then I go home. Before I go home, I have a day that they moved me up to another floor, and I got to go home a day early. And here's another fingerprint. All of a sudden, do you know who my PT person was? Yeah, another one of my friends. Her name's Pam Showers. Pammy comes in, and she and I got to be good friends. We used to work together at the Prairie Athletic Club. And let me tell you something. She comes in, and I wanted to just die. And yet, helping me learn to walk again, praise God, I didn't need to learn to walk again. Most brain people, they got to have a couple days, get you going. I got up and was walking just fine. I tried to look at that as a positive. But she's helping me, and we're talking, and I go home, and I live the nightmare. I put my husband at the door, and I said, don't let anybody in here. He became my guard. I wouldn't let anybody come to my house. I wouldn't let anybody see me. It took me probably, the only person I will say, I had a couple of my friends that were able to get in, and one of them was Sue Lawton. Sue is the one person that I wanted to be in there because I needed her to fix my bandage every day till I could have surgery 2 and surgery 3 and surgery 4. And I'm going to tell you one more thing. All of the stuff that you see up here, there were so many things that God did for me. It was crazy. And including when I went back to work, 60% was my disability. They had a fund at work. They reimbursed me 100% of all of my time off. I'm like, who does this? As we went through here, it's a beautiful picture, isn't it? That's what my eye looked like when I would shut my eye. It would roll to the back of my head, which, by the way, all of our eyes roll back, evidently. Our eyelids cover it when we do this. That's what they're telling me. And you start to look at this. I go to surgery number 2, and I go to surgery number 3, and I go to surgery number 4, and I go to surgery number 5. But what I want you to know is this. This is my verse. All things, not most things, all things, when you're a child of God, work together for good to those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Now, I want to share 2 things with you. This week I had lunch with one of my friends. She knew I was speaking. Oh, I'm going to do this, April. This is a gift she gave me. She made me and gave me because I had a vision spending some time with my friend Linda in the last year. Linda always gets me up to a place where I can relax, get away from everybody. And I was having some time with God that morning. And I have one last thing that I want to share with you. I saw this, I'm going to say, illustration in my head. And I just am sitting there talking to God. And I'm closing my eyes. And as I close my eyes, I see these words, the woven piece by piece. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. It's a great name for a book. That's awesome. And I start to see my life, my story, what God's been doing and weaving together. And he shows me these remnants of fabric. They're ugly. They're like what you'd use to quilt, but they're ugly. Nobody would want to do that. And they're coming down. And the crazy thing is not only are they coming down, but I'm starting to look at them. I'm like, well, this is crazy. They've got words on them. And I'm looking at them, and then I'm realizing those words correlate with every hard time I've ever had in my life. And I'm blown away. I am like, wow. And then I see this. I see these remnants coming down, and they have words like cancer. I went through that as a teenager. affair. Been there, done that. My ex-husband broke my heart. Divorce. Been there. I understand that. These are times I thought I'd never get through. These are times that I wanted to die, give up. I can't tell you. But I had God that just kept saying, don't give up on me, don't give up on me. Suicide attempt. My mom went through a time, chemical imbalance, darn near took her life. Hard times, we're going to go through them, right? Single parenting. Any of you a single parent in here? I understand this. This is amazingly hard. It's heartbreaking, and everything you go through, and the anger and the bitterness and everything else. Unemployed. I had a spouse who was unemployed, eliminated the position, had to go through that. Lawsuit. Any of you been through that? Something one of my sons got us involved in his teenage years. Severe child illness. Anybody gone through something like that? These are the things that get you. These are the things that take you to your knees. These are the things that you cannot do on your own. And what God tells us to do is to not give up on Him. Don't give up on Him. Yeah, it takes time. His timing is perfect. It's not our time. Christine's right about that. And then after I see all of these remnants, I see how God has pulled together my blanket of peace. I see this beautiful, beautiful quilt. And God's telling me, Trula, this is your life. This is your life. I have been with you every step of the way. And everything you thought was horrible and you couldn't get through, I was there. I was moving things to happen to make something good come out of your life. I saw these deep blues and purples, and the purples were meant to remind me, you are a daughter of the King, not the King of England. Can you imagine that royal family? Holy moly. You are the daughter of the King of Kings. Let that sink in. You have royalty running through your blood when you take on the blood of Jesus. I'm telling you. Then he showed me how the trunk and the roots. That's my Father. That's Jesus. That's the foundation. This is what He does for us. He reinvigorates all the crap, the brokenness, the everything, and He begins to breathe life into those things that sucked. Those things that were black and dark. And you're like, why? Why did I have to go through that? And each one of those branches, these are my family members. Because you know what? We're women. We're moms, we're sisters, we're grandmas, we're daughters. God made us different than men, guys. He made us this way for a reason, because when they hurt, we hurt. There's just no way you get through it. Right, April? You get those things where when you're a mom, everything affects you. And if you'll notice the dark ones on here, they're not ugly. They're still dark to remind you there's scars and memories that were hard. But they take on a beauty that God brings out of something horrible and broken. And then if you look at this, and again, Aspen, I'm calling you out when you see this. These are aspen leaves. You see, my sister-in-law, Kelly's sister, is an amazing quilter. She's a story quilter. And when she heard my vision last year and the fact that I was contemplating talking to God about it, she got me in touch with her sister, Corey. And I had to share this vision with Corey and say, how do we get this so I can share it? How can you help me do this? And she brought this to life. And then what she did was she began to put what I had seen on my blanket of peace woven, piece by piece. This is who I am. This is what God does. And if you are going through things in your life that you're like, I'm about ready to give up. I can't do this any longer. My life sucks. God is saying, don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. You're my daughter. Talk to me. That's all prayer is. It's walking through my house and yelling out at God, what are we doing today, Lord? It's taking a few minutes to give him time, and pretty soon you want to spend more time. And then you want to spend more time because you know what? You start getting refreshed. And I'm going to tell you what, if you're going through hard times, my number one thing I swear by, this kind of music. You put Christian music on. It's why I'm so passionate about Christian hip hop and rock. Guys, that's what your kids are listening to. It's what your husbands are listening to. Put the right words in their ears. Let it breathe life. And it makes a difference. So as you think about this, and I pray that everything you're hearing from all of us today, we're real people with real hurts, real scars. We understand this. And the only thing we know that gets us through and makes something beautiful out of it is when we give it to God. And I had asked these guys to play a song that was put on my heart for this conference. And it's my favorite artist. His name's Brandon Lake. Just like the song my son sent me and said, Mom, play this hype song. It'll get you going. This song is called Don't Give Up on Me. And I want you just to listen to the words. Don't sing, although you can if you want. But I want you to just reflect and think about what God's doing for us. And Sean's going to put up the words to this so you can see them if you want. If you want, just close your eyes and listen to the words, because this is God talking to you. The words you hear in this song, this is what God's telling you.